This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet world. West Alabama, how are we doing today? It's another episode of The Joe Gaither Show. You're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter at Joe Gaither6, and you're watching us on YouTube on the Bama Central YouTube channel at Bama Central. You can always find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon, The Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. We appreciate everybody who subscribed, rated, reviewed the show, shared it with a friend. We're having a lot of fun. We are getting close. I guess next month will be our year mark with Bama Central. I'm looking forward to that. I'm very thankful for that. All right, so let's get into today. It's been a really, really big weekend around Alabama athletics and the like, so we're going to talk about several different things. We left off on Friday by talking about the guys who went in the first round on Thursday night. That was J.C. Latham, that was Dallas Turner, and that was Terry and Arnold. Those three guys went to three places, and we'll leave that in the past. If you missed that conversation and you want to hear my thoughts on those three guys, you can look at Friday's episode on all the platforms that I just mentioned. We're going to start today by going through rounds 2 through 7. That's 7 more guys who got drafted from Alabama. We're going to talk about Alabama basketball's big weekend, 2 official commits or rejoins. One is a commit, one's a commit, and one is I'm coming back for next year. We're going to talk about Grant Nelson and LeBaron Philon, along with Ugana Onyenso and Cliff Amori. Both guys kind of in the mix. Who's going to be that last? Who's going to be the last stamp? I guess who's going to stamp the finality of this Alabama basketball roster? This morning, on Monday morning, we got news, Alabama football news. Cameron Howard transfers in. We'll talk about Cameron Howard. We'll talk about Ed Woods, his visit to Tuscaloosa, and a guy, Khalil Jacobs, a linebacker out of South Alabama. So we'll talk about that from the football side of things. And then James Brockermeyer made his decision. We'll talk about his decision, his new school that he's going to end up going to. And we will wrap it up with 2 guys in the NFL, Alabama guys in the NFL, who got paid today. Real big money for Christian Barmore and Jalen Waddle. We'll talk about that to round out the show. So that's going to be the plan today. You can jump in and join us on the comment section at Joe Gaither6 on any of your social media platforms, on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Send me your comment, question, query, or complaint right there, and you can be a part of the show. So let's get right into it. The draft kept going. We ended our show Friday midday. The draft kept going with rounds 2 and 3, and then we had rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on Saturday. And okay, time to eat a little bit of crow for me. The 3 guys that I went out on a limb with on Friday and said I didn't think they were going to get drafted, they did. Everybody got drafted. Alabama, all 10 guys who were really projected to get drafted got drafted. Darian Dalcourt joined the Baltimore Ravens on a undrafted free agent deal shortly after the draft, or maybe an hour and a half after the draft. But everyone that was really projected to be drafted was drafted. So congratulations to all 10 guys who were taken this year in the NFL draft from the Alabama perspective. I think Alabama was second or third, just behind the Michigan Wolverines, and right there with Texas and Washington for the most players drafted in the draft. So let's go back to it. Round number 2 started with Kool-Aid McKinstry getting drafted in the second round. And I know a lot of people, or at least a lot of things that I saw on the social media machines from Thursday night to Friday morning was, Kool-Aid McKinstry, why would you have a draft party? You're not a first rounder. And that's a load of hooey. If you are disparaging some of these guys because they're having a draft party because they think their dreams might be coming true, look, this should have been an all-weekend affair for all of them. And so Kool-Aid, I applaud you having your draft party on Thursday night because I think, a lot of people thought he was a first-round pick. A lot of people thought he was a first-round pick. And then he comes back on Friday and basically has a similar get-together, similar gathering, and doesn't have to wait too long to hear his name called, gets drafted by the New Orleans Saints. So let's look at the New Orleans Saints roster real quick. And we look at their cornerback situation. And you got Marshawn Lattimore, obviously was a first-round draft pick in 2017, still manning one of the cornerback positions. Alontae Taylor, a second-round draft pick in 2022, plays nickel cornerback. And then Paulson Adebo was a third-round draft pick in 2021. So Kool-Aid's got a little bit of, you got some established guys in front of you, but if you're getting drafted in the first 2 rounds, you're going to see the field very soon. And I think that, look, New Orleans is a good spot for Kool-Aid. You get to play indoors. You get to play against some of the most, I guess, erratic quarterbacks in the league right now. Baker Mayfield obviously has had a resurgence in Tampa Bay, but he still has a little bit of that wild card in him. Then obviously Atlanta, with what they did over the weekend with their quarterback situation, you'll either be playing against Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix, and you catch him in prime time, Kool-Aid McKinstry, you might get that Kirk Cousins interception. And then of course we all love Bryce Young on this show, and I do love you, Bryce Young, but you really struggled last year as a rookie. We'll be honest about that. Obviously, not very much help around you along the offensive line. And who was your best pass catcher? Adam Thielen, old man Adam Thielen, who good career, but past his prime. Obviously, I think Bryce will have a better second year, but you're going into a division with a lot of quarterbacks that you can pick on, Kool-Aid McKinstry. I am happy with this landing spot for Kool-Aid. So you see both the corners. Terry and Arnold goes to Detroit. Oh, hurts my heart, obviously, from the Bears' perspective, but wish him well. I think it's going to be a good spot. Both corners going to dome cities, dome stadiums. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to work out just fine, and the Saints fans are going to love him. One just tidbit, make sure you go pick up Kool-Aid McKinstry's new custom flavor, black cherry lemonade, black cherry Kool-Aid. He said that was his favorite growing up. So they put out a custom Kool-Aid flavor, black cherry. If you want to be supporting Kool-Aid going forward in the NIL front, I guess it's not NIL anymore. It's an official sponsorship with Kool-Aid. You can purchase yourself some of that black cherry flavor and support Kool-Aid McKinstry. All right, to Chris Braswell, moving on. Chris Braswell was the next guy taken in the second round. So Alabama had 2 second rounders taken by the Tampa Bay Bucks. Let's look at the Bucks depth chart. You're looking at Chris Braswell, and they haven't updated. Have they not updated? Right there. No, they have updated. Yeah. I'm looking at rlads.com. I love rlads for all my depth charts and all my roster kind of breakdowns, both college and professional. But you look at Chris Braswell, and you look at what really the Tampa Bay Bucks are doing in their kind of 3-4 scheme. You got Yaya Diaby, was a 3rd-round pick, a right outside linebacker. That's kind of going to be his main. You got to go beat Yaya Diaby to get your starting role. On the other side, the left outside linebacker is Joe Tyron Shoyinka. Shoyinka was a 1st-round pick. Excuse me, Shoyinka. Where were you from, buddy? 2021 was a 1st-round pick from Washington. Okay, junior entry, one-year starter at Washington. Okay, Joe Tyron Shoyinka. That's a name I have not heard. I'm not familiar with. But Chris Braswell, not really a challenging, not really a big crowd in front of him to find some playing time. And I think that, honestly, I was talking about it with a friend. Chris Braswell is an underrated prospect as far as this whole draft is going. Yes, he was a 2nd-round pick, and obviously if you're a 2nd-round pick, you're pretty well thought of. But I think Chris Braswell is going to be a guy that can be in this league for 7 to 10 years. And, maybe he's going to make 1 or 2 Pro Bowls. He's probably not going to be an all-pro, but he's going to be a really solid. He's a guy who is fundamentally sound in both the run and the pass. I don't know that he's he's obviously not as dynamic as Dallas Turner was or Will Anderson was. But as far as a fundamental football player, a guy who's going to set the edge for you, a guy who's going to do the right things for you, pretty much down in and down out. And honestly, he's capable of playing all 3 downs. That's something that's not really common for linebackers in the NFL. He's capable of playing against the run on 1st down, and he's capable of playing against the pass on 3rd down. You wouldn't want to really drop him into coverage too much, but I think that he's going to find a nice home in Tampa Bay. Now, you got Randy Gregory. They signed Randy Gregory, he's got such a crazy story. All kinds of talent, but will he kind of be in the mix for Chris Braswell? Will he kind of be in the mix as far as a hindrance for Chris Braswell to gain some playing time? But I think Chris Braswell landed in a good spot in Tampa Bay. I got to give you a lot of credit. That is a really solid pick, in my opinion. I like the Chris Braswell pick a lot. Obviously, Dallas Turner was the premier defender, and both corners. Corner is such a premier position anyways. But I think Chris Braswell and Justin Aboigbe, we'll talk about him in just a second. They were my probably 2 favorite defenders in the draft for Alabama, just because they were so fundamentally sound. Every time, they did 2 things very well, Braswell and Aboigbe. They understood their assignments. They executed at a high level, and they were both 100%ers. Every time they were on the field, you could tell, oh, he's given 100%. Now, whether there was a physical deficiency here or there, yeah, you just deal with that. But as far as, oh, this guy knows where to go, this guy knows his assignment, he understands what the offense is trying to accomplish and understands what his role is in the defense. I really like Chris Braswell, if you cannot tell. All right, we're going to continue on because these NFL picks, I mean, it kept going, and there's a lot to get into. In the third round, Jermaine Burton became the next wide receiver to go off the board, and goodness gracious, it was about 1,000,001 wide receivers. 1,000,001 wide receivers going in this draft. Jermaine Burton goes in the third round to the Cincinnati Bengals, and this is a very interesting landing spot. This is a very interesting landing spot because of they just got rid of no, T. Higgins is still there. They just got rid of Tyler Boyd, right? Tyler Boyd. Is that correct? Tyler Boyd was the third wide receiver for Cincinnati, and he is now, where the heck is he playing? Pittsburgh. Oh, no. He's a free agent. Oh, he's still a free agent. Okay. All right. So they replaced Tyler Boyd with Jermaine Burton. That's kind of the way that went. And obviously, you guys know Joe Burrow up there. Do you still have Irv Smith? No, Irv has moved on, apparently, according to our lads. But Joe Burrow throwing to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So you've got really, really talented 1 and 2 for Cincinnati already. A really talented 1 and 2, and you've lost your 3, and you're going to go replace him with Jermaine Burton. Basically, I think a third-round pick for Jermaine Burton is a bit of a value pick, considering how many wide receivers went in this NFL draft. Wide receivers, how many actually went drafted 2024? That was a ton of them. Wide receivers. Let's see. Come on, give me. Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. Picks by position. Thank you very much. Oh my gosh. Wide receivers. How many are there? All right, here we go. Let's count all together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 wide receivers went before Jermaine Burton. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 23, 24, 25, 26, 7, 8, 9. 31, 2, 3, 4. 34 wide receivers were selected in this NFL draft. And you got Jermaine Burton in the third round. You got Jermaine Burton ahead of former Alabama wide receiver Javon Baker, who went to New England. Then Jermaine Burton got drafted ahead of Aniyah Smith, the Texas A&M wide receiver, who kind of made some noise in both games against Alabama. Look, it's a good landing spot. He's behind A.D. Mitchell. He's behind Jalen Polk. He's behind Ladd McConkey and Keon Coleman. Basically, he fell, as far as talent-wise, about right where he should have. Obviously, Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunes, and Marvin Harrison Jr. were like your main guys, your main 3 receivers. But outside of that, you still had kind of this second-tier group with Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman. And then after that, there was Jermaine Burton in that kind of next-tier group. And he led, in my opinion, that next-tier group. I think Cincinnati is going to be a really strong place for him to land. You heard Coach Saban. Coach Saban was awesome after the draft. You heard, or during the whole draft, but you heard Coach Saban on Friday basically say Jermaine Burton does what he needs to do on the field. Jermaine Burton is a really good football player. And basically Coach Saban said that he's got to do a better job about doing what he needs to do off the field to prepare for football and to be, on his P's and Q's and not really in any hot water. I think Coach Saban said a lot in those comments without saying a whole lot. And I would just wonder how many times he has given that speech to Jermaine Burton. It seems like that was a theme for 2 years over and over and over. But Coach Saban was very, very excited after Jermaine Burton got drafted, and you saw him with the little clappy clap gif. Hopefully that will take off on the internet. All right, so the third round ended, and Alabama, let's see, Chargers. Oh, I missed the Chargers. Chargers are lads, because let's talk about Justin Boybe. Justin Boybe got drafted in the fourth round. and he gets drafted to the Los Angeles Chargers right there. They have him listed as defensive tackle, which may or may not be right. Obviously, the Chargers are going to be running a 3-4 scheme, and he's not going to be playing the nose. So, yeah, defensive tackle, defensive end is going to be about right. He's looking at Puna Ford, and Morgan Fox is kind of his primary competition. Puna Ford, wasn't he out of Utah, right? 2-year starter, Tilton Head, Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. Puna Ford out of Texas. So you got a fella, a UDFA. Let's see, they signed him. Seattle free agent. They signed him this offseason. Los Angeles Chargers, undrafted free agent. They signed him this offseason. Look, I like Justin Boygby. I love the fact that you get to go to a place where there's a brand new head coach. And we'll talk about that with Jace McClellan here in just a minute, because every slate gets wiped clean. Obviously, Joey Bosa is going to be a starter, and he's going to be playing on the edge and playing outside linebacker. Like, that's a given. Justin Boygby is not going to be taking that spot. But every other spot is pretty wide open. When there's a new coach, and, I mean, look, the Chargers have been on the cusp of, we are a Super Bowl contender for the last, 3 years, 4 years, really since Justin Herbert has been in charge, and they haven't really been able to get over the hump. I think that this is a really exciting time to join a team. Hey, look, if you're a rookie, you either want to go to a team that is very, very established and is competing, or a brand new team where you can establish yourself. And I think this is a great opportunity for Justin Boygby. He got drafted in the 4th round. I think he's a better player than that. I think some of the injury concerns with his neck might have caused some organizations to pause. I think Justin Boygby was really, I mean, he wasn't Dallas Turner this year. He wasn't the best player on Alabama's defense. But, I mean, just as far as consistency went, Justin Boygby was 100% every time he was on the field. It was, I'm giving all my energy. And not only that, is his IQ. He was all over the field. I mean, you just have to turn on the Tennessee tape to watch him chase down screens, watch him recognize screens, and then turn and chase them down. I think that Justin Boygby was underdrafted, and the Los Angeles Chargers ended up with a great, great pick in Justin Boygby. All right, so you didn't have anybody in the 5th round. And that was started to make me think that I was going to be right. Remember, on Friday, I inaccurately said that Jace McClellan, Will Reichert, and Jalen Key would probably not be drafted. Joe was wrong. I own that. I was incorrect on that, because after the 5th round, you had 2 in the 6th round. Jace McClellan surprised me, definitely surprised me in a good way. I'd love to be surprised in a good way. Jace McClellan was drafted in the 6th round by your Atlanta Falcons. Maybe they're your Atlanta Falcons. They're not my Atlanta Falcons. But you get drafted to the Falcons, and there's kind of a mixed bag here for Jace, because, what did the Falcons do last year? They drafted Bijan Robinson in the 1st round, running back Bijan Robinson, and there were no running backs drafted in the 1st round this year. So Bijan, obviously a special player. He's your lead running back here in Atlanta. They have Tyler Algier, who, wasn't superstar running back, but carried the load for him before Bijan was there. And when Bijan gets hurt, he's a good little running back. So Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson, kind of Bijan first. Bijan and Algier 1 and 2. You look at the rest of the backfield, you see a guy named Avery Williams and Carlos Washington. You slide in Jace McClellan. And really, if you're Jace, you just got to end up being the 3rd back, I think. You want to make this team, you want to make this roster, you got to be the 3rd back. You're going to keep 4 running backs on the team, maybe 3, maybe just 3, but you're at least going to keep 4. And if you're Jace, you got to look at, you're not beating out Bijan Robinson. That's just not going to happen. You're looking at Avery Williams, and you're looking at Carlos Washington Jr., and you're saying, I can make this roster. I'm younger than both you guys. I'm more explosive than both of you guys, just for the sheer athleticism factor. And I know that Jace was hurt towards the tail end of last year. He really dealt with a stress fracture in his foot, basically playing with a broken foot, giving it all to Alabama. I'm just I don't know what he's going to be in the NFL. I don't really see him being a starter anywhere, and definitely not with Atlanta as long as Bijan Robinson is there. But for Jace, really, I mean, cash checks playing football. What more can you want? I'm cashing checks playing football. It's more than I ever did. It's more than most of the people that are listening to this show or watching the show ever did. I know LaRon McClain sometimes watches, and he absolutely cashed a lot of checks watching football. So that's awesome. We want to give a shout out to LaRon McClain. But really, if you're Jace McClellan, you got drafted to the Falcons. They have a new coach as well. Raheem Morris was hired in the offseason, so it's a fresh slate for everybody. And the whole offense is really getting a fresh slate. Kirk Cousins, brand new quarterback, and then obviously they drafted Michael Penix in the first round, and people scrutinized that pick. I wonder, I think that's a little bit of instant reaction. I think Michael Penix, if he turns out to be a good pick, then everybody's going to forget about it. If he turns out to be a good quarterback and they move on from Kirk Cousins in 2 seasons, there's an out in the Kirk Cousins contract in 2 seasons that will be very cheap for the Atlanta Falcons to move on. If Michael Penix is ready in 2 years, they use the out in Kirk Cousins contract and Michael Penix steps right in and plays well, then people are going to be eating a lot of crow from their reactions on Thursday night. But all this to say is that Jace has a great opportunity here, in my opinion, because everything is so new. I mean, you look at their offense and you see Drake London, former first-round pick. Bijan Robinson, former first-round pick. You look at the tight end, Kyle Pitts, former first-round pick. So they've got a lot of talent on the offense. You just got to put it all together. You look at their offensive line, Caleb McGarry, first-round pick, Chris Lindstrom, former first-round pick, Jake Matthews, former first-round pick. They're loaded all over the board along the offense. But it's just really going to be up to Jace, and really Jace's goal, in my opinion, should just be to be the third running back. If Bijan goes down or Tyler Algier goes down, then Jace needs to be ready to move right into that rotation. And I frankly think he can. I think he can. You look at the Falcons roster, you look at the rest of the running backs. I mean, look, I'm not going to put him up against Bijan as the number 1 running back. Come on, I'm not that foolish. I think he's in the Tyler Algier kind of ballpark. He's got the same sort of. I mean, now Algier is much more of a bruiser than Jace McClellan, but he's, I mean, talent-wise, skill-wise, they're about the same. Different kind of backs, but about the same. I think Jace is better than Avery Williams and Carlos Washington Jr., so I think he can make this roster. And for Jace, what a weekend. What a great weekend. Almost going on. You go to 3 hours away from Tuscaloosa, and you're going to go to a fan base that has a lot of built-in fans for you already, and you go from, maybe I'm not even drafted, maybe I'm a 7th-round pick, to getting that call a round earlier. I'm happy for Jace McClellan. All right, we keep it rolling. In the 6th round, Will Reichert got drafted. And Will Reichert's draft pick is significant, not because he went to the Minnesota Vikings and I'll see him in my division for two times a year, but because of what it did for Nick Saban. Will Reichert's draft pick basically concluded the all 22 for Nick Saban. Well, all 24. You've had a quarterback drafted, you've had running backs drafted, you've had umpteen wide receivers and umpteen cornerbacks and safeties and linebackers and defensive linemen. You've had everybody drafted. You even had J.K. Scott drafted. J.K. Scott drafted by the Green Bay Packers several years ago. So, boom, you had a punter drafted. You had every position drafted in your college tenure except for kicker. And Will Reichert ended that on this Saturday. So Nick Saban, with his final draft class, sees at least one player in every single position at Alabama got drafted. Now, multiple people got drafted in the traditional positions, but only one punter and only one kicker. And thus it rounds out Nick Saban's, I got everyone drafted in every single position. Now, Will Reichert, Minnesota. You think about Minnesota, and they've had an interesting run of kickers. Minnesota Vikings kickers. They've had a lot of kickers in the last couple of years. Blair Walsh was a kicker. Dan Bailey was with them for a little bit of time. Oh, my gosh. Kai Forbath was with them for a little bit of time. So Will Reichert goes to a place that has not a great kicking, not a great kicking history. They signed John Parker Romo in the offseason. They didn't re-sign Greg Joseph. But you go to a place in Minnesota, Will Reichert, you're going to kick in a dome. Home games are kicking in a dome. Great for you. Now, I wonder about your leg. Honestly, that was the biggest issue with Will Reichert was the leg strength. I wonder about his leg in places like Green Bay, in places like Chicago, where you're going to play at least once a year. It's only one game for each place, but at least once a year. Then, Will, if you end up playing, games in Buffalo, this, that, or the other, there's going to be some bad weather environments. But for Will Reichert, this is a really, really positive landing spot, in my opinion. Look, I think all these guys, now, I don't really want to be the, Mr. Cheery, positive guy, but there's not really anything for me to criticize other than my own personal, this guy went to my rival. There's nothing for me to criticize. The Vikings needed a kicker. They signed a kicker from the UFL, XFL in the offseason. So Will's not going to just walk into the starting job, because that's kind of the way the kickers go. Kicking, it's kind of a constant competition, always bringing in guys to push the starter just a little bit. But for Will, you go to an offense that's probably going to be kicking a lot of field goals. I mean, look, they drafted J.J. McCarthy. They've got their boy Justin Jefferson. They've got a good offense, but it's probably going to go through some growing pains with a rookie quarterback. So Will's going to have a lot of opportunities to score some points. And you take the NCAA's all-time leading scorer, and you put him in an NFL uniform, I think that he'll do fairly well there. My only concern is some of these outdoor venues. Now, if the Vikings can end up with home field advantage in playoff situations when they're rebuilt, then that won't be a big issue. But I am a little bit concerned about, Minnesota, you got to go to Philly and play in the cold weather in December and January. I think that's going to be just a little bit of an issue for Will to overcome. But as far as landing place and fit and need, the Vikings needed a kicker. They absolutely needed a kicker. And for Will Reichert to go to a place that's probably going to be kicking a lot of field goals into a dome stadium, I think it's a great fit for him, and I wish him well in Minnesota. And lastly, I mean, we said Nick Saban finished the trifecta. Finished his grid, but he also accomplished something else with Jalen Key. Jalen Key, the 7th-round draft pick by the New York Jets, ensured that Nick Saban has now had a number 1 overall pick, number 1 overall pick in Will Reichert, and a last pick, number 1 overall pick in Bryce Young, last year. We're moving on from Will Reichert. And a last pick, a final pick in Jalen Key. Jalen Key goes to the New York Jets. And the New York Jets, you look through their depth chart, he's going to have a challenging time making the roster, in my opinion. No, does it mean he can't? No, he absolutely can. You draft a guy, you're going to give him a little bit of special treatment. That's kind of the way that works. But you look through the New York Jets secondary. They got Chuck Clark. They signed from Baltimore. They got Ashton Davis, a 3rd-round pick from 2020. Those are 2 guys he's going to have to overcome. Maybe he can find a place if strong safety is more his speed. Tony Adams was acquired in 2022, and Jarek Bernard Converse was a 6th-round pick in 2023. You think about his kind of fit. Look, I think Jalen Key can play in this league. I think Jalen Key can play strong safety and be a run stuffer. I'll worry about him a little bit as speed gets down the field, depth down the field, the route tree goes vertical down the field. But if you play him in the box, I think that he will excel. Now, the Jets defense has been fairly good over the last couple of years. Now, it was a brighter spot last year when Aaron Rodgers got hurt. Aaron Rodgers is now back. They signed his son, Riddick, and they signed Javon Kinlaw. So they're loading up on the defensive side of the football. We'll see if Jalen Key can make the roster. It's good for him that he was drafted because that's a little incentive for the general manager to keep him around. But I do think that he's going to be on that fringe of the 53. Right now, basically all the rosters are expanded to 90. And so that opens up a lot of opportunities for a lot more people like Darian Dalcourt, who signed an undrafted free agent deal with the Baltimore Ravens. They're going to go through the rookie minicamp, and the minicamp, and they're going to go through rookie training camp and the regular training camp, tail end of July, and they'll start preseason and the rosters will get cut down to 53. And so for Darian Dalcourt, I don't know that he's going to end up making the roster, but it's a great thing to go to camp. It's a great thing to compete at camp, and I think that that's going to be very beneficial for Darian Dalcourt's football future, whether that's in the NFL or whether that's in the UFL or somewhere else. I think that going to an NFL camp, getting an NFL camp invite, and ideally staying healthy through these 4 or 5 weeks or so that is the camp, performing fairly well, even if you get cut. You gotta leave with a strong reputation. Oh, this guy played well. We just didn't have a roster spot. He was healthy. He gave us all. It just didn't work out. And maybe Darian Dalcourt can do that and land himself somewhere else after training camp. So there's everybody who got drafted. You had 10 guys get drafted, and then 11th with Darian Dalcourt go undrafted free agent. And so I'm nobody, and I'm surprised because that's it usually doesn't work out this way, but nobody went to a situation where I thought, ooh, that's a bad spot for him. Ooh, he's not going to work out very well there. Ooh, he doesn't have an opportunity to get onto the field. No, I think that all 10 of the Alabama guys have an opportunity to get onto the field. It's going to be harder for Jace McClellan and Jalen Key. It will be. But I do think that McClellan has a very clear path to making the Falcons roster. And I think that Jalen Key, with a little bit of luck, can make the Jets roster as well. So you wish everybody well. We'll keep up with these guys in the NFL as they continue their careers. But really, Nick Saban, it was a great weekend to close out the Nick Saban era, really. The last little, in my opinion, event that had Nick Saban's stamp all over it. Now Nick Saban fully on the ESPN team, basically saying, oh, I'm happy to be a part of a team again. After, to different reporters after the draft weekend concluded. It was a fun draft weekend. I'm excited from a Bears perspective, just for my Bears. I hope you are excited for your team. I'm excited really for all 10 of these draft picks. I think they all landed in pretty good spots. I mean, obviously, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but I think that these guys landed in good spots that if they take the lessons that they've learned here at the capstone and apply them to their professional football futures, I think that they all can really turn out to have successful careers and continue to cash checks playing football. All right, let's keep this bad boy rolling with more weekend news. 2 pieces. One happened on Saturday and one happened today. This is going to shift to basketball. We're going to shift focus to basketball. LeBaron Philon, you guys all heard about it over the weekend. LeBaron Philon, oh my gosh, let me out of my letter of intent. Let me out of my letter of intent to Kansas, and Kansas does so. LeBaron Philon visits Tuscaloosa and commits to Tuscaloosa. LeBaron Philon was the number 1 overall player in the state of Alabama before he transferred to Link Academy in Missouri. He's a 4-star player. He's a point guard, a ball-dominant guard. And I'm excited. Nate Oates, you're a bad man. You're a bad man. In all the best ways. Because look, you thought, for a long time, LeBaron Philon, I'm going to Auburn. I'm going to Ole Miss. I'm not going to either school. I'm going to Kansas. And basically fell off the radar. Fell off the recruiting radar. I'm going to Kansas. And then, of course, the Rylan Griffin stuff kind of manifests and kind of accelerates. And Rylan Griffin transfers out and goes to Kansas. And was it a trade? No, it's not a trade. Bill Self and Nate Oates weren't on the phone. Well, I'll take Rylan Griffin and I'll give you LeBaron Philon. No. But it sure seems like it a little bit. LeBaron Philon asked out of his letter of intent with Kansas and essentially is now on his way to Tuscaloosa. And Nate Oates in this roster is just getting more and more dumb by the day. Dumb in all the best ways. Today, on Monday, Grant Nelson basically announces that he's coming back to Tuscaloosa for another year. There was a lot of speculation about Grant Nelson going to the NBA draft and going professional and leaving school. But Saturday night's NBA draft deadline came and went, and Grant Nelson did not submit his name into the draft. And I don't know how much NIL was at play here, but I think a decent amount. But really, from a basketball standpoint, it is just, oh my gosh, absolutely dumb what this roster is about to be. Let's look at it. Let me pull up my roster tracker. Where am I at right there on my notes app? Right there. Boom. Here we go, 1 through 13 right now. Now, it's still going to change, and it's subject to change. But 1 through 13 right now, You got 4 guys out of high school: Aiden Sherrill, Darian Reed, Nas Cunningham, and LeBaron Philon. That's good enough for the number 2 recruiting class in the country. Yeah, that's Alabama basketball with the number 2 recruiting class in the country. Not football, but basketball. And you look at the transfers in, and you got Houston Millette, Chris Youngblood, and Aiden Holloway. Boom, the 3 transfers in. Houston Millette, great shooter, one of the best pull-up shooters in the country last year. Aiden Holloway, former 5-star McDonald's All-American. And Chris Youngblood shot 40+% from 3 down at USF. So you get 3 really dangerous transfers. Okay, you keep rolling. Jaron Stevenson, you're still growing him, and you liked what you saw out of him as a 17-year-old kid. You got Latrell Wrightsell back, your best shooter from last year. Grant Nelson declares he's coming back, and you got Mohamed Diabate and Mo Wagi. Who's left? What's 13? It's Mark Sears. Mark Sears is number 13, and I think Mark Sears, he's going to stretch his decision out all the way until, 10 days before the NBA draft is the deadline, I believe. It's mid-June. So you got to wait on Mark Sears. But that's your 13 right now. And that is a dumb roster. That roster is extremely talented. That roster is unfair how talented it is. And let's talk about it a little bit further. In town this weekend is Cliff Amari, the transfer from Rutgers. 6'11", 240 pounds, averages 11 points, something like 8-9 rebounds a game, handful of blocks a game as well. This man is the rim protector that Alabama needs. You bring Cliff Amari in, and I'm sorry, you shuffle somebody to the transfer portal, probably Mohamed Wagi or Diabate, unfortunately. But you shuffle somebody to the transfer portal, and boom, you have your big, and your guards are Mark Sears, LeBaron Philon, and Aiden Holloway as kind of your primary ball-dominant guards. You got Latrell Wrightsell and Chris Youngblood and Houston Millette as kind of your 2s and 3s. You catch your man, Jaron Stevenson and Grant Nelson as your 4s, and with Cliff Amari, Aiden Sherrill, and maybe Mohamed Wagi as your 5. Like, this roster would be so dumb. It would be I say unfair, but maybe it's not. I know, obviously, this creates expectations around the program, but let's be honest. I think the expectations are there really since the Final Four run. And look, if I know Alabama fans like I think I do, the expectations aren't going to go away. It's, hey, you guys got to get back to the Final Four, and ASAP. You guys got to stay in contention for these SEC titles, both regular season and tournament titles. You got to get over the hump and win that national title. The expectation, the bar has been raised here at the capstone. And I think that Nate Oates has really, really responded to that bar. I think he knows how close this team was. You have a Charles Bediako. Do you beat UConn? I don't know. UConn was incredible. They were very, very, very good. And I don't want to take any of their flowers away from them. But if you had a center on this team, a Charles Bediako on this team, then I think that game, I mean, what was it? It was still a tie game with 12 minutes left. I think that Alabama takes UConn all the way down to the wire with Bediako. So you pivot and you say, hey, this is how close we were. Let me go get Mark Sears back. Let me talk an elite rim protector in Cliff Amari. Now, look, you might have woken up to the same news that I woke up to today, that Ugano Onyenso was crystal ball to Alabama. And if you've listened to the show any length of time when Kentucky gets brought up, I love Ugano Onyenso. I cannot express my affinity for Ugano Onyenso enough because, look, while Antonio Reeves and Reed Shepard were really, really good, and Rob Dillingham, great shooter, Ugano Onyenso was, and even to some degree, Zvonimir Ivisic, Big Z, was a little bit this. But Ugano Onyenso was so much more athletic than Ivisic. So much more. Oh, yeah, Ivisic was super tall. He's 7 foot and change, and he's got his arm way up and can't get over him. Yeah. And Ivisic had a better shot and was a better offensive player than Ugano Onyenso. But Onyenso, it was the defensive player that fit the Alabama need the most, really, honestly. You could take Zvonimir Ivisic, and obviously he's transferred to Arkansas, so that's off the table. But it's just hypothetically, if you could have got Ivisic, and you would have had a fine defender, but not near as athletic, not near as swift of foot, as fleet of foot. Onyenso, his feet are so light for such a big man that his agility is all over the place. His length is all over the place. I think that if you don't end up getting Clifford Amore, Ugano Onyenso is an excellent consolation prize. I don't even see it as a consolation prize. I maybe selfishly, and maybe it is biased. Maybe it is biased because I watched more Kentucky than I watched Rutgers this year. That's the truth. I did watch more Kentucky than Rutgers. But every time I saw Ugano Onyenso on the floor, I just thought, that's a defensive monster. That's a not necessarily Ben Wallace type, but kind of a Ben Wallace type. Obviously, offensively challenged. He is offensively challenged. But as far as instinct, rebounding, shot blocking, is incredible in my opinion. And I believe a little more coaching. I mean, come on, we've talked about John Calipari's coaching and really his development of talent or lack thereof. I think Ugano Onyenso comes to Tuscaloosa, if he does come to Tuscaloosa, and raises his game 10% over the course of the year. I think this staff is that good. I think this staff, look what they've done really consistently. Every player who's come through the NATO system is better when they leave. You can argue, oh, he wasn't good enough to play, or that fellow, whatever. Doesn't matter. Player X, choose any of them, any player in the NATO era, and that player X was better when he left Alabama than when he started. I mean, that's really inarguable. And I think that Ugano Onyenso would greatly benefit from a year under Nate Oates' tutelage, a year with Preston Murphy, a year with Ryan Pannone. Obviously, you still got to get the last coaching slot filled. But you look at Coach Oates' track record, and he's been bringing in really, really excellent coaches. So I know that Cliff Amore is the big name, and everybody wants to be able to use the Clifford, the big red dog memes and GIFs on social media. And trust me, I'm right there with you. I am right there with you. I remember growing up on Clifford, the big red dog with my family. But if he doesn't come, and the choice is Ugano Onyenso. I saw somebody on Twitter today, let's not act like he's good. Let's stop acting like he's good. I'm sorry. Just because the man doesn't score 12 points a game and isn't, going to hit, look, he's not going to be shooting any three-point shots in this offense. He's not. That's not what he is. He is a rim protector. He is a rebounder. He is he's cleaning it up at the rim. He is, I'm the alley-oop. I'm finishing at the rim. That sort of guy offensively. But with the rest of the roster, I mean, we just outlined it. Grant Nelson, Mark Sears, Latrell Wright, Chris Youngblood, Houston Millette. I mean, you've got plenty of offense. You got plenty of shot making on the team right now. You need to get that elite defender. And whether it's Cliff Amore or Ugano Onyenso, I think Alabama basketball is in a great position. And so as we look forward to November, or really, as we look forward to September, are you more excited for Alabama football or basketball? I think it's a wild time for both programs because I think the intrigue is so high around Alabama football with all the newness, and we want to see how Kalen DeBoer manages, and Kalen DeBoer, whether he keeps it going or whether he crashes and burns. I think the intrigue at the inside the Alabama athletics department is probably at an all-time high. If you are able to field, if you ever put these guys, if you're able to put these guys into on the roster, all 13 guys on the roster, I'm sorry, Coach Sanderson, but it might be the deepest. It might be the deepest Alabama basketball roster that's ever been assembled in Tuscaloosa. And that sounds blasphemous to say. It feels blasphemous to say because I love Coach Sanderson. I love what he built here throughout the 80s. And look, the 2022 roster, right? 2022 roster, the Brandon Miller roster was incredibly talented. But I think that what you're building right now might be even more talented. My friend Anna Tramble chimes in on Facebook. Don't make me choose because I've been asking people, do you want to choose basketball or football? Obviously, the easy answer is both. And I think that both are absolutely attainable. I don't think that you have to choose. I think that both are very attainable for both programs. I think that Alabama football could find themselves into the college football playoffs again. And I do think that Alabama basketball could is setting itself up for another deep run. So you as a fan, I don't think you have to choose, but I like making you take the hard choice and seeing what people say. If you want to chime in on football or basketball, you can find me on the Twitter machine at Joe Gaither 6. I got myself a little poll up right there. You can chime in. The question is, would you rather watch Alabama football in Atlanta at the college football playoff finals, or would you rather watch Alabama basketball in San Antonio at the Final Four? Right now, I got 184 votes, and 57% say Alabama football in the CFP finals in Atlanta. I don't necessarily agree with you. I think if I have to choose, I'm going to take San Antonio, the Final Four in San Antonio, but I absolutely respect your opinion. And honestly, my true answer is both. Please, let's have both. That way, it makes for an easy season covering both sports. They're both very, very good. Everybody's clicking on our stuff. There's plenty to talk about, and it's very intriguing. So, yeah, both is the right answer. But if I'm choosing, I want to go to San Antonio. Alabama basketball Final Four. Be there with me next year. It looks like this roster, oh my gosh, it is setting up to be amazing. All right, let's keep going. Let's flip to the other sport. It's football. Football got a big commitment today and is kind of in line for two others. We'll talk about him right here. Cameron Howard. Cameron Howard is a safety out of Charlotte, and he is transferred from Charlotte and played 1 year, freshman. He's got 3 seasons of eligibility. Cameron Howard is going to be kind of, well, first, let's address this. No, Cameron Howard is not going to affect the Ed Woods recruitment, the Ed Woods decision. Everybody wants to know about what's going on with Ed Woods, the cornerback from Arizona State. Ed Woods visited Tuscaloosa this weekend. He's going to visit Michigan State, and I think a decision will come in the next couple of days. But you go back to the program, what was it, on Wednesday? Ed Woods went into the transfer portal thinking about Alabama. That was his quote. So I think that Alabama stands in a good position for him. And you definitely want him. You need him. Even if you got Cameron Howard like you did today. You got Cameron Howard today, and he fills a little bit of a need in the back end of the secondary. He's not really going to be safety type, perhaps. He's going to be a little bit more of a, this is not going to be a corner, perhaps. Getting all my words a little jumbled. He's not going to be playing corner as much as he is safety. But you know, it's a 4-2-5 defense. There's 5 guys in the back end. His fit is more this husky, the old star, the nickel corner, really. The kind of, he's either a nickel corner or he's a star or he's a third linebacker type run filler. Yeah, that's what he's going to end up being for Alabama. And Alabama needs more depth there. You look at the roster. I mean, look, it's easy to say Malachi Moore, and yay, we're set with Malachi Moore. And you are. 5th-year super senior. He's going to keep the back end in line. He's going to have the back end basically set. And you remember Coach Saban last year talking about Malachi Moore basically being the one who the one who directs the defense. He said, Malachi communicates to everybody. He's the best communicator on the team. He gets the defense set. And he's going to do that again this year with the new regime. But you look at the back end, and it is so inexperienced. Malachi's been playing football for a long time. He's got a lot of SEC experience. Great. Check mark. Awesome. The rest of the secondary is a bunch of questions, talented question marks. But Keon Sabb comes from Michigan. And, yeah, he's got collegiate experience as well. But I'll be a little bit biased and say that the SEC is a little different than the Big Ten. And he's basically in line to be a full-time starter, whereas at Michigan, he was kind of a rotational piece, not a full-time starter. Okay, so you're comfortable with Malachi Moore and Keon Sabb back there, but the rest of the defense, Devontae Smith got a lot of hype last year, but got hurt. Nick Saban loved him, got hurt, didn't really see much of him. Tony Mitchell got a lot of hype last year, got in trouble with spring break, never really saw him last year. You've got a lot of question marks. Red Morgan, incoming freshman. A lot of hype through the spring. They said he hit people real hard. They said he was in the right position as a freshman. But these guys don't have any real college experience. And now, look, does that mean they're bad? No. But there is no substitute for experience. None. And so you bring in Cameron Howard and you say, okay, this guy's played. Yes, it's 12 games at Charlotte. It's not in the SEC. What is their conference even? Charlotte Conference. What is their conference? The 49ers, they're in the same conference with Temple. Is that the A10? The AAC. Oh my gosh. Where have I been? When did they get into the American Conference? All right, great. So it's not as bad as I originally pictured. Uh, but it's more experience than sitting on the bench. It's more experience than the practice field over here on Bryant Drive. I'll tell you that. So it's a good kid for Cameron Howard, or for Alabama football. You still want to secure Ed Woods, cornerback at Arizona State, because of what we just outlined. The corners are even worse as far as experience was. Now, talented, 5 stars all over the place. Damani Jackson, 5-star. Jaleel Hurley, I think, was a 5-star as well, 4 or 5-star. But I know Jalen Mbakwe, I know Zay Mincy was, and I know Xavier Brown was. So you've got highly rated, highly considered guys in the corner rooms, but only Damani Jackson has college snaps. So you really, really, really want to go all in on Ed Woods. I mean, at the moment, he seems like the prime target. He was here over the weekend, and I think that really you bring him in, and it just gives a sense of security in the cornerback room. Maybe he doesn't play over Xavier Brown. Maybe he doesn't play over Zay Mincy or Jaleel Hurley or Jalen Mbakwe. But maybe he does. Maybe he plays over them and gives those 3 freshmen a little bit of a chance to see a college game from the sidelines. And even if it's a rotational system where, okay, Ed Woods, you're in for a series or 2, boom, Jalen Mbakwe in for a series or 2, Zay Mincy, Xavier Brown. Look, the fact that you can slowly feed these freshmen, baby bites of college football, I think would be the best way. I mean, corner is so hard. Corner is one of the hardest positions on the field. You talk about tackle, it is absolutely, but corner, in my opinion, is up there top 3 hardest positions to play. So you want to slowly feed these freshmen experience. And if Ed Woods comes, you can do that. If he doesn't come, then those guys are full bore, wide open. You just got to eat, man, and eat as best you can. Chew and swallow, and let's see how well you can do. So Ed Woods came over the weekend. He's still in consideration, but he's on his way up to Michigan State. We'll keep it going. Khalil Jacobs is a South Alabama linebacker who goes into the transfer portal. Khalil Jacobs. Let's make sure we get some things right about Mr. Khalil Jacobs. Now, he's played in 11 games last year. Played 4 tackles, season high, 2 tackles against Old Dominion. That was as a freshman. That was in 2022. That's not what I want to see. I want to see 2023. Yeah, played in 13 games last year. But in 13 games, made 56 tackles, 8.5 for a loss, 3 sacks, had 1 interception, and 3 forced fumbles. Khalil Jacobs has gone into the transfer portal, and look, you remember he went into the transfer portal in the winter window and then withdrew his name. In the winter window, he was highly connected to Alabama, and then he withdrew his name and went back to South Alabama. I don't know about you, but when I watched 8A, I saw one major need for Alabama football. You look across the board, they got quarterbacks, they got running backs, they got receivers. Everybody's adequate. Everybody, you can win with them. You can play with them. You can, play top-level football and roll the dice and see if you win or lose. But Alabama has a big hole at its 3rd inside linebacker position. And you look, you talk, Joe, that's not a big deal. That's no problem. That's not an important position. You're right. It's not an important position. It barely ever gets on the field. But what happens when Deontay Lawson or Jihad Campbell get hurt? Those 2 guys are the ones. Those 2 guys are on the field. You got your 2 inside linebackers. They're starting. What happens when one goes down? You need the 3rd inside linebacker. Last year it was Tresman Marshall. Is it Khalil Jacobs this year? Look, you looked at what happened at 8A. Yeah, Justin Jefferson looked undersized, frankly, got pushed around in the running game. You looked at Jeremiah Alexander, looked like a fish out of water at the 2nd inside linebacker position. I'm sorry, but he did. And I liked what I saw out of Justin Okoronkwo, but the kid is a freshman from Germany who's never played real high-level football. So do you want to depend on Justin Okoronkwo? Maybe. He's an athletic freak. He looks the part. But again, going back to very inexperienced, no real college experience. You want to slow play his integration into college football, I think. So Khalil Jacobs becomes a big target for Alabama. I think you really need to address that 3rd inside linebacker position because while I love Deontay Lawson and I do love Jihad Campbell, I think both those guys are studs on the inside. You look at the track record last year. At any given time last year, one of them was hurt. And really, I don't think Deontay Lawson was ever really 100% after his initial injury. I think he kind of just battled through it. So it is a huge position of need, I think. And I think the hole at inside linebacker, the third inside linebacker, really enabled the Alabama offense to look so good during A-Day. You think about, oh, man, the offense looks good, the defense. Well, Jahad Campbell didn't play. You saw Justin Jefferson basically serve as that second inside linebacker, and you saw how ugly it looked. So do you want to go into the season that way? Let's say Jahad Campbell rolls his ankle of week 1 against Western Kentucky. You want to go up to Wisconsin with Justin Jefferson as your second starter? I don't think I do. Maybe you do, but I don't think I do. So Khalil Jacobs becomes a very important piece for this Crimson Tide, for the coaching staff to kind of go after. One more note on Cameron Hayward. I missed this. Cameron Hayward already has a tie. The safety from Charlotte, who committed to Alabama today, already has a tie to this Alabama coaching staff because he was recruited by Mo Linguist. Mo Linguist, when he was at Buffalo, was trying to get him to commit, trying to get him to come to Buffalo, but ultimately he went to Charlotte instead. So he's already got a little bit of a connection with the coaching staff that way. That's part of the reason why he was so quick to go to the portal and then come to Alabama. Then let's finish this up. We'll stay on football, but we got 3 guys, one who's no longer part of the program, and 2 who aren't a part of the program but will always be in the family. James Brockermeyer made his decision over the weekend. We kind of hit on it when he went into the transfer portal. TCU was the obvious choice. I thought it was either TCU, SMU, or maybe even Texas, but he ends up going to TCU. And on one hand, I think it's a little shady, but on the other hand, I just tip my cap to him and applaud him because James Brockermeyer is really beholden to James Brockermeyer. While you do want him to be loyal to Alabama just because of the last couple of years, he's really only loyal to James Brockermeyer, and that's okay because Alabama's only loyal to Alabama. Let's be honest about it. James Brockermeyer started at center through the spring, mostly because Parker Brailsford was dealing with personal issues. I think that James Brockermeyer saw the writing on the wall that once Parker deals with his personal issues, gets some things worked out, and returns to the team, I'm going to go back to center number 2. And James Brockermeyer said, I don't want to do that. I want to be a starter somewhere. I've worked hard. I want to be a starter somewhere. And I think Brockermeyer put on good tape during A-Day and during the spring and got good reviews from his coaches and landed himself a starting role. You can't be mad at that. You can't be mad at a guy who goes somewhere and starts. I think that you see a lot of people, oh, you didn't want to compete. Weren't you starting? You were afraid of Parker Brailsford? I don't think fear had anything to do with it. I think that you have to really maximize your opportunities when they're so finite, like it is being a college football player. And let's be honest, James Brockermeyer is not really, we'll say that, has a very slim chance of being an NFL player. So if you've only got one more year left to play this game, go play where you're going to start. So James Brockermeyer chooses and announces that he's going to TCU. All right, let's finish this bad boy up with 2 guys in the NFL who got paid today. First, Christian Barmore. Where's my tab at? Christian Barmore. Christian Barmore got $92 million. Isn't that what I saw? $92 million from, isn't that what I saw? From the New England Patriots. Christian Barmore contract news. Yeah. $92 million. What a deal for him. Former second-round pick. Look, he's one of the better players on that New England defense. And so today he signs a deal worth $92 million, 41.8 guaranteed over the next 4 years. It's the 7th richest deal among NFL defensive tackles. So for New England, they're in full reset mode. Obviously, they've got new coach, Gerard Mayo, and defense is still a premium in New England. And big ups and big props to Christian Barmore. 4 years, $92 million, $41 million guaranteed. You want to invest in the show, Christian Barmore? Be the lead sponsor. This could be the Christian Barmore the Christian Barmore segment of the Joe Gaither Show. And lastly, Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle had his 5th-year option picked up by the Miami Dolphins today. So how much is that worth? He's playing next year, 1 year, $15.6 million. Woo! $15 million for Jalen Waddle for his last year on his rookie deal. And what will usually happen during this time is Jalen Waddle will get extended by the Miami Dolphins. So that $15 million is nice, but it's probably going to be a whole lot more once it's all said and done. And he agrees to an official contract extension with the Miami Dolphins. All right, we're right at an hour, and so we've done the damn thing today. I appreciate everybody who's watched us today. You watched us on Facebook, on Twitter, and YouTube. You can be like Anna and comment on us at Joe Gaither 6 on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, or you can subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon. We appreciate everybody who's watched us and tuned in, everybody who's commented on the show. We'll be back with another edition of the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.